Hey everyone, my name is Steven, I'm Protocol Cosplay, and this is a probably very long video in terms of a breakdown of Shadow RC. Shadow RC is a new control system for an R2 unit to get them working, to get them moving, speaking, all that kind of stuff. And it's gonna have hopefully some more upgrades in the future. But today I wanted to put out this video so that anybody who's using Shadow RC or is getting ready to use it has a breakdown of how it works, what should be happening, and before everyone goes crazy on building this, they know how it should be built or what it was programmed to do. So that's what this video is going to be about. I realize it's going to be a very long video, so if you want to skip the chapters, there are chapters in the description. So feel free to skip around as you would like to figure out some certain things. So let's get going and give you a breakdown of what Shadow RC does. So first off, why did I make Shadow RC? Well, the story behind that is pretty simple, actually. I was building an R2-D2 because I do C3PO, and hopefully you'll see more videos from me about C3PO and doing him. But I do C3PO, and I wanted to make an R2-D2 to go along with me and kind of be a pair. And I was building a Shadow build. Now, Shadow, or Shadow MD, is a control system for R2. It uses an Arduino 2650. It uses a Sabertooth 2x32 motor controller and the Siren 10 motor controller. And it also uses a SparkFun MP3 trigger, or at least that's generally what it's supposed to do. It also uses a Arduino board to trigger automation and run servos in the body or the head. So I built that. I built the whole system. I got PS3 controllers. That's these handheld controllers that you see a lot of people using. I liked that because I could, potentially put them in my pocket and walk around, or behind my back and walk around, and no one would really know who was controlling R2. So I decided to go for Shadow. I built the whole thing. I got all the components. I put everything together. I wired everything perfectly. I got everything, nicely and neat on his electronics board, which you'll see in a minute. I did everything that you really needed to do for a Shadow build. However, right at the end, when I was coding Shadow, I couldn't get the PS3 remotes to actually connect to the Arduino. I don't know what it was. It could have been the PS3 remotes themselves, or it could have been the dongle that I was using. It could have been the code. It could have been a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why it might not have worked, but for whatever reason, it didn't. I couldn't get the controllers to connect to the control system, so therefore I couldn't make an R2-D2. It wasn't going to work. So that being the case, I also found a bunch of information on the reliability of Bluetooth. And Bluetooth is great if you're doing something that is kind of at home and not incredibly intensive. But I almost exclusively do cons and big events and stuff like that with C3PO and bringing along R2. So I needed something more reliable. I needed something that wasn't going to just kick off or lose the connection on the con floor, because then you'd have to push R2-D2 back to wherever you're going and then figure out how to reconnect the controllers and all this other stuff. It was not great. So I started looking to other control systems, things like the XB Stealth system, or even Padawan 360, even though that's another Bluetooth system. I started looking into regular RC control systems with a general big RC controller. And I basically was going through all of these systems looking for something that would at least work, and then I could maybe upgrade it later. And what I found was that RC was probably going to be the best method for him. the reason being is because RC is much more stable than Bluetooth. It's analog, it's a signal, and it's a tone, technically. It's a radio signal, right? It's a radio signal that goes from a transmitter to a receiver, and those things are inherently linked. They're not, the receiver's not listening to other control systems, although it probably could get confused in some cases, but if there's a lot of signals around. But it's more or less listening to one transmitter and one receiver talking to each other. And then that signal goes into the control of the droid. So I was like, yes, let's do RC. Let's make an RC system. But I also thought, well, that's great, but I don't want to be carrying a big old chunkin', controller that you would use to fly an airplane or, drive an RC car or something like that. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want this hanging from my neck and me driving it around. I want something that is concealable, something that can go in the pockets. So I started looking into things like what Disney does. I was like, well, maybe there's a controller that I can plug into a transmitter and carry a bag with me, but I plug it into the transmitter and I just have these handheld things. And that didn't, those are all proprietary or built, their own way and stuff like that. So couldn't find that. But as I was doing a search on handheld transmitters, I came across these. And these are what the entire Shadow RC system is built on. Technically, you can use any transmitter that you want, but these are the transmitters that I had in mind when I was doing this system. So if you're gonna do this system, I would highly suggest getting these. These are from Queen, and I got them on Amazon. There's other versions. There's like Hot RC. Some have a screen, some don't. They're really basic 6-channel transmitters. But when you put them together and you get 2 of them and 2 receivers, you get 12 channels. And that's the great thing. So you've got 2 channels on the joysticks, up and down, left and right, on both of these. And then you've got 4 buttons for the other channels. So for a total of 6 channels, here you go. And these are great because these are pretty much exactly what I wanted for my Shadow build. I can put these in my pocket, and walk around or behind my back. And it's basically just like holding the PS3 remote. Now there's not as many buttons, and that is gonna go into some other chapters in this about like how to control R2 with just these limited buttons, but I'll get into that. But these were the breakthrough. And not only were they a breakthrough in terms of handling them, they were actually pretty reliable. They have a little quirks. They're probably not as great as like Fly Sky or something like that that's like super accurate, but these do the job. So that's where Shadow RC came from. Shadow RC came from necessity. I didn't want to work with Bluetooth. I also didn't want to work with a bulky control system like Kyber or something like that. My Droid is very basic. I don't need 12 different functions to operate his utility arms or his panels or anything like that. It's a basic droid. And you should know, this is usually tuned toward basic droids. But there's all sorts of things that you can do when it comes to this droid as well, even if you're going with this system. But this system is a lot more reliable than Bluetooth. Now, I haven't gotten a field test yet, but from what I'm seeing, it's very good. And it's super easy to connect these controllers, which I'll go through in the next chapter. But for now, that's how Shadow RC came about. It was using the actual components of a Shadow build or a Padawan 360 build, but just making it my own and changing it from Bluetooth to RC. So in the next chapter, we're going to kind of talk about how to operate Shadow RC and go through some of the modes. And then I'll hopefully give you some breakdown on how everything is wired. So let's get into it. Okay, so we know why Shadow RC has been created and we know how. But let's go into how you actually operate R2. So, like I mentioned, Shadow RC is using the original components of a Shadow or Padawan 360 build. So you need an Arduino 2650 Mega. You don't need the USB host shield for this. You just need the board. That's the great thing. You don't need that pesky USB host shield that has to have its chip removed and then replaced with something else. You also don't need the ADK, although it's nice to have the ADK. But you just need an Arduino 2650 with the appropriate pins and be able to wire basically the wires from the receiver to the pins on the Arduino. I'll show you that in a little bit. But you just need the Arduino 2650 Mega. You need the Sabertooth 2x32. That's pretty standard on most droids. And it's what this code is designed to talk to. So if you're thinking about a different motor controller or something like that, just know it probably won't work. Sabertooth and Siren are using what's called packetized serial. And I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but basically there's an RC mode on the Sabertooth and the Siren. They just get the raw signals from something like this, and it just moves the dome, or it moves the control of the drives, and that's just raw RC. There's simple serial, and that's a whole other thing, and then there's packetized serial. So in the same way that you would wire up a Shadow to the Siren and the Sabertooth, where you kind of link a signal wire through each one, that's how this is wired up as well. Again, when we get into the wiring, I will show you what that looks like. So you use the Arduino, the Siren 10, the Sabertooth 2x32, and an MP3 board. I haven't been able to test other MP3 boards. I know the SparkFun, the old SparkFun V2.4, I believe, works, because that's what I have in here. I'm trying to test out some other MP3 boards to see if they're compatible as well. But so far, this is what it is. It's basically one of those older Droids builds using Shadow, but now using Shadow RC. So once you've got him all together and you've got him all the power and all the motors and all the stuff that you know, there's a lot of documentation on how to wire up a Droid and all that. And I'll show you my setup, but there's a lot of information about it. Then you just have to load the code onto Arduino using Arduino IDE, and then you're basically ready to go. So if I turn, and I have a switch down here for R2 in the front of his skirt, if I turn on R2, what should happen is my amp should kick on, and then we'll hear a sound. It's a little low, but it's that THX 11 or that THX sound. My sounds are pretty low right now. I can turn them up later, but basically the same startup sound that you would get with a Arduino will play if a Arduino is not present on here. I'm still working on Arduino compatibility. It's there, but it's kind of not, because the MP3 board that I'm using, the SparkFun, is very finicky. It only plays up to 255 sounds. It has to be very carefully managed. So I'm working on it. It might have native Arduino connection here in a little bit, but suffice to say, you might not even need the Arduino if you're not doing any kind of servos. So now that he's on, he's in what's called manual mode. So let me turn on my controllers here. And that's it. They're connected. I'll show you that connection in a little bit. But now that it's on, he's in manual mode. Manual mode is basically full puppet mode. Anything you do for the droid in terms of making him move, you have to do yourself. So on your left or B controller, you've got the dome. And that's great. On the right, you've got forward and backward. and I'll just kind of move him a little bit. But you also have left and right, and you can do tank mixing. Don't run away. Just don't want him to hit me. So yeah, you've got your controls on for driving, and you've got your controls for that, for domes. So that works. Let me get him into a position here. Okay, and then the buttons in manual mode are a connection to his MP3s. So on your right stick, when you're just kind of sitting and you're making him, move around and you want to talk, on the right stick, the up on the D-pad, I'm just going to call this a D-pad because that's basically what it is. But up on the D-pad is happy sounds. And hold on, let me make him a little louder so you guys can hear. I've got a panel back here, but I will turn him up and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so up on the D-pad is happy sounds. Left on the D-pad is going to be your talking sounds, so just random chit-chat. Down on the D-pad is going to be your sad sounds. And all these are doing is just random. It has a set number of sounds on the card, and it just randomizes and clicks through them. You might hear the same sound twice, but in a row. But generally, it's just going to be one sound randomly played. And then right on this D-pad is going to be your yelling sounds or your angry sounds. Yeah. You also have these buttons on the other joystick, and these are going to be more for music and lines and things. So up on this D-pad is going to be classic music, or, right? Sometimes you have to shut them up with another sound. Left on the D-pad is going to be, I believe it's going to be singing, like as if R2 is singing the song. It's happy birthday. Again, I'm only clicking his happy sounds just to kind of make him stop playing his tracks. There's not like a stop button, just so you know. I didn't want to put in a dedicated stop button for the MP3, so just click another talking or something like that, and he'll override that MP3, and then he'll stop quicker. Down on this D-pad is going to be his dance music. And there's a couple of tracks. And then, I know, right? And then right is going to be classic lines like Leia.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
I only have 2 on there right now. All of these ranges are expandable. They actually have some buffer zone in there. So as long as it's inputted correctly, the spark fun is a little weird, but as long as you stay within the ranges that I've set for the happy sounds and stuff like that, you can edit it to your needs. It's pretty self-explanatory, but there is some information on the readmes and stuff like that on how to do that. So that's manual mode. It really is just that. It's just, movement on this stick to make him go forward, backward, left, right. Dome movements on this stick, pretty basic. And then sounds on the buttons. So now we move into the next mode. And the next modes are going to be automation modes. So what I've done with automation is, because I have direct access to the dome, I am able to move it independently of these. I can just tell it to move. And that's what hybrid mode and automated mode go into. So let's go into hybrid mode. Okay, so what is hybrid mode? Well, hybrid mode is basically a way to automate the dome while and the sounds while just concentrating on driving. The way you go into a mode in this system is that you can do combos on these controllers. Combos are done when you push a joystick in a direction and then you hit a button. So for instance, if I was to go into hybrid mode or any of these modes, anytime that you want to switch a mode, you take your left hand joystick and you pull it down. When it's pulled down on the other controller, you can hit one of the 4 buttons. And he initially comes in manual mode, but you can always go back to it if you hit up on this D-pad. Left, while holding this joystick down, is going to be hybrid mode. Down is going to be automated mode, and right is going to be carpet mode. I'm not going to do carpet mode here. It's basically just the exact same thing as manual mode, but it has a little extra power in the drives. The speed cutoff is a little higher, so that you can get over carpet a little bit more and utilize a little bit more torque from your controllers or from your motors. But let's go into hybrid mode. Hybrid mode is, like I said, it automates the dome and the sounds, but it allows you to keep driving the droid while that's happening. So to get into that mode, I pulled my left stick down and I hit left on the D-pad. Now you can see he's starting to automate his dome. Think about automated domes and something that I'm actually going to work on is automated domes are great for when you want to just automate some parts of his dome, but the problem is that sometimes they can get a little bit, oh, there he goes. He has a timer. So basically he picks a move and he figures out how far he wants to move. But automated domes are, especially when you don't have a very, hold on, I gotta make him a little bit quieter. But automated domes are great and they often work, but as you can see, he's not facing forward anymore. And the reason that he's not facing forward is because the automation of the dome is not great. And the reason is because basic dome motors, I just turned them down a little bit. Basic dome motors don't know where they're at in space. So let me put him back into manual mode. I'm gonna turn his dome a little bit and we'll go back into hybrid mode. Okay, hopefully he comes back and looks at us. But basically, and I'm gonna be working on this and fine tuning this, but basically automated domes, when you just have the dome motor, it doesn't know where it's at in space. It just knows how long it's running. And the goal of this whole thing was to get it to where it would move independently, but stay centered, based on timing, based on an angle. So as you can see, he turned that way and now he's turned back. That's what he should be doing. He can make 1 or 2 moves in a direction or both directions, and then generally he's supposed to get back to center. And I've worked a lot on that and tried to make that work. However, there is going to be one little update that I make to this code, and that is using a motor that has an encoder on it. I've already ordered a motor and an encoder combo, and I'm going to implement that into the code. So basically it's like Romadome, right? Romadome is an encoder system that hooks onto your droid, knows where it's at in space in terms of its rotational angle, and then it can tell the droid where to put the the dome, and it can always come back to center. I'm hoping that that works with this motor that I've ordered, and if it does, I'll implement it into the code so that he always knows where center is, and he can always come back no matter how many moves he makes. But this is basically hybrid mode. This is a mode that is also tunable. You can adjust how quickly his dome moves or how often he speaks. Right now he's kind of conservative in terms of his dome speed, his dome angles, all that kind of stuff. If the encoder works, I'll up that and make it a little bit more functional and more often that he actually turns his dome or speaks. But there's variables in there that you can always change. But yeah, that basically is hybrid mode, but you can still drive the droid. So even when he's driving, he will still have the ability to speak and move his dome while he's moving around. So again, a little bit of fine tuning and seeing what you might like in terms of his speed of his dome, his frequency of dome moves, that kind of thing. And when his encoder motor comes in, I will test it and I will add to it and see if the code can benefit from that encoder. And even if it's just a really basic encoder that just tells it where center is, it should at least work for that. So that's hybrid mode. But as you can see, hybrid mode, when I go into this doesn't do anything now. This left-hand stick that's normally for the dome doesn't do anything. So what is it doing? Well, what it's doing is it actually is pausing automation and MP3 outputs. So for as long as you hold this down, his dome's not going to move and his sounds aren't going to sound, or at least that's what I hope is happening. See, as soon as I released it, he moved. Now he might move his dome during an automation, during a what I call a kill switch. His dome might move, but his MP3s should really be completely gone. But the reason that that's happening is because when you do a push up on this joystick or left and right on this joystick in hybrid mode, now you've got extra combos. Now these aren't assigned to anything right now, and that's just because I don't have a lot of stuff to do combos with. I don't have tons of servos, I don't have Arduino boards and all that kind of stuff. I don't have that right now. But what it's supposed to do and what it will do is that, let's say you have on your Arduino board, right? You want to engage his dancing operation, right? His little animation of his dome panels and such. Well, in hybrid mode, you can say, I want that to be left on this joystick and up on this button. Boom, he does it. It sends it to the Arduino does its thing, and you're able to do your combo. Similarly, if you did right and up, or right and down, or right and left, or up and this way, there's a lot of different combos that you have. But what happens is you don't have access to that here. So this joystick is still active. It's still going to move him backwards, forward, left, and right. So you can't make a combo with that. You also still have access to your manual MP3 triggers. So if I hit this, he's going to start playing a sound. And that's fine. But at the same time, that is still hybrid mode. So when hybrid mode activates, you basically have 3 more sets of combos. You have left and right, and up in terms of combos that you can activate. However, you still have the combo to change the mode. That's always down and then a button on this joystick, okay? So that's hybrid mode. And if you can understand hybrid mode, it basically is a driving mode that keeps his dome moving and his sounds sounding so that you can drive the droid without having to worry about making his dome move or hitting the MP3 triggers yourself or something like that. So that is hybrid mode. Now if you go into automated mode, and I'm just going to because right now, the modes, when you switch into them, it assumes that the droid's head is centered, okay? So let me just get him centered here a little bit. Now let's go into automated mode. Automated mode is, like I said, pull down on the stick and hit automated mode. But we're gonna do a whole new chapter for it. It's pretty simple, but let's get a whole new chapter. Okay, let's do automated mode. Automated mode is pretty much identical to hybrid mode, except that he doesn't move. It's a static thing. So if you're just sitting your droid down and you want to keep him alive, talking and his dome moving, that's automated mode. So again, for automated mode, you pull down on the left joystick and hit down on the button on the other joystick. And there you go. Now he's in automated mode. Now you'll notice that even if I push my right joystick, nothing's happening to his drives. He's static and he's not going to move. I can't even control his dome. This is a completely autonomous mode. But what this also does is, like with hybrid mode, now you've got these as combos. So now you can push this joystick up and hit buttons on this, and this will activate a combo. Similarly, if you pull down and hit a combo, or push left or right, all that is pretty much identical to hybrid mode, but now you've opened up an entirely new joystick. You've still got these combos. Pulling down on this joystick is always going to change the mode, but you still got left, right, and up for combos. You also have left, right, and up for combos on all these. What this means is that apart from the mode switching, which is only 4 combos, you've got 32 different combos that you can do in given modes. Obviously, certain combos have to be activated in automated mode, where you have access to these combos through this joystick. But other combos can be activated in manual mode. Manual mode, you can push upward on the joystick for the dome control and activate a combo on these triggers. In hybrid mode, you can go left and right for the triggers. And in automated mode, you can go in pretty much every direction. So that's automated mode. It is meant to just kind of be sitting there, and again, he'll benefit hopefully from the motor encoder. If I find a good motor encoder, I'll let you guys know so that you know this works. Get it. It's fairly inexpensive. It was like 25 bucks for the motor controller with an encoder on it. So if I can get it to work, I definitely will show you. So that's pretty much him. That's his modes. Now, I did mention carpet mode. And carpet mode, if I put him into carpet mode, he didn't go right with it. Sometimes this button's a little finicky. But carpet mode is pretty much identical to manual mode. It's just that he has a lot more power in his drives, so he'll move a lot faster to get over carpet. I don't want to move him. We're on hard ground right now, but that's pretty much what carpet mode is. So that's the modes of R2. Now let's get into some more specifics and things you should know about Shadow RC before you start getting going, and then we'll round this out and we'll finish out. Okay, that was a long time to get through that. And if you are still here, thank you so much. I do plan to make more videos, so if you want to subscribe to the channel and help me out, that'd be great. But basically, what are we going to do from here? Well, some things that you should know about Shadow RC. Again, it's built on the premise that you're using these kinds of controllers. I built this to understand certain things. So for instance, one thing that you should know about these controllers is that the buttons are kind of tricky. The buttons go from a high state, right around 2000 PWM signal, and a low state, right around 1000 PWM signal. That's why you can hear when I don't know if you can hear this, but if you hear that little button sound, you can hear like a high sound and a low sound. it's telling you I've gone into high state and I've gone into low state. Now, it doesn't matter for this because this will trigger an MP3 sound no matter if it's going from high to low or low to high. It's fine. It always triggers. But channel 6, which is going to be right on this, is actually a momentary switch. So it only switches to high for as long as you're pushing it. And sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. So if you just quickly go like that, nothing sound because it was too quick of a signal. The signal basically saw it as a spike and it was like, oh, okay, that's weird. So for the momentary switch on number 6, if you're not hearing sounds, just hold it a little longer. And now he's playing a sound. And it's just because this is staying in a low state and then it bumps up to high while you're holding it and then it bumps down to low, okay? So that's why you might not 100% feel it. And if you're using these controllers and you're kind of confused on why these buttons are kind of behaving differently, that's why. The other thing about controlling R2 with RC systems is kind of similar to why that momentary switch needed to be held down. The spikes in PWM signals can get a little confused. So if you look at my dome control and I just do this, right? I flicked it that way. Nothing happened, right? Well, that's because, again, the signal was too quick for the code or the understanding of you going, wait, was that a false move or was that an intentional move? I'm trying to build in a little bit extra capability, and when the motor that has the encoder comes in, hopefully that'll help me inform the motor a little bit more. But basically, quick movements like that, those quick, yeah, see, he picked it up there. But those quick individual movements aren't really going to translate very well. I don't know if they translate well in the regular Shadow RC, if it's similar, where you can't do those very quick half a second or a fourth of a second moves and expect the dome to even do something. But you should know that you have to be kind of intentional with your moves. So if you want to move the dome and you want to move it slowly, well, just move the stick slowly, be patient with him. If you want to move him fast, ramp up into it rather than just hitting it like that. If you just go like this, yeah, he'll pick up and he'll do it. And that's probably not the best way to do it. Maybe you ramp up into it and then ramp down, right? So, just some piloting ideas. Same thing happens here. I'm just gonna hold him just in case, but if I go back very quickly, yep, see, he picks it up a little bit and he kind of flicks a little bit. But yeah, sometimes he just doesn't pick it up fast enough. So be intentional with your moves. When you wanna turn him. When you wanna turn him back, turn him back. When you want to move forward, move forward. Be intentional with your moves so that he doesn't get these quick little like, why are you stuttering? Why are you being jerky? Be fluid with your movements. And then have fun with him. But we're also going to go into a wiring. I want to show you some wiring and how I've set this up. But I'll have to get his back panel off and I'll show you in a little bit what that looks like. But those are just some things to remember about Shadow RC. First, it is ever evolving. We're going to add in things that hopefully won't break the bank. They're off-the-shelf components that'll help with him, like the motor that has the encoder on it. I'm going to be continuously updating the code based on how I feel. When I'm driving him around, if I notice something and I think I can fix it with code, I'm probably going to do it and I'll update the code. And then, there's a lot of different things that you can do to help with his driving and stuff like that, like being intentional with your moves and don't being jerky with it, and don't slam the stick forward just when you want to go forward. Ease him into it, move him with it, that kind of thing. And he will be very solid in those regards. So I'm gonna go over our wiring thing as kind of a wrap up of this video, and then I will be back to kind of wrap it up. But let's get into the wiring so you can kind of see how I've worked it out, and then we'll continue. Okay, everyone, here's a kind of a basic look at the wiring that I've got going for Shadow RC. It pretty much wires up exactly like Shadow in the sense that the siren, or sorry, that's the Sabertooth, and the siren hook up their signal wire to pin, I believe it's 16, and their ground to the Arduino. And then you've got all these extra wires which are coming from the receivers. Now, it's well documented in the starter guides and the builder guides as to which pin goes where. But these are the two receivers that you get from the controllers. They're blinking right now because they're not connected to the controller. The controller's off. But basically, you just take each one of these DuPont connectors. I got pre-built DuPont connectors and then just cut off the power wires. So that it's just a signal wire. But you wire them up to where you get power in. That's where this little amp or this little fuse is coming from. Again, hard to see because I've wired everything up. But basically, you plug in your receivers into the various pins on the board. Again, it tells you where to plug in each signal. And then you are good to go. And these little green things on the Arduino is something that you can find on Amazon. They basically change the DuPont style kind of pin connectors, and they sit on top of them and they make them into some terminal connections, which I really like a lot more for stability. You'll also see a blinking light in there. And that blinking light indicates the mode that the Arduino is in right now. So right now it's blinking once because it's in manual mode. If it blinks twice, that means you're in automated mode. 3 times is hybrid mode, and 4 times is carpet mode. So it's a nice little visual indicator as to what is going on. Again, you plug in your Sabertooth and your siren just like you would normally. And then you also connect a data line up to the SparkFun MP3 player, which is pretty simple. I believe that's pin 18. It goes up into the SparkFun on its RX pin, and then that plugs in, of course, to the amp. So that's pretty much it. That is the wiring setup for this setup. It's almost identical to Shadow, but instead of using the USB dongle, you now use a bunch of this wire loom, basically, of channels from the receivers and plug them in to pins on the Arduino. And then you've got the setup. All right, everyone, if you made it this far, thank you so much. This was a very long video, just kind of walking you through everything about Shadow RC. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through the system with me. I'm really proud of the system. It's working great. RC is such a nice tool to use for reliability, for precision, well, not precision, I wouldn't say, but it's pretty precise. But especially for reliability, for range, for not dropping the signal, that kind of thing, it's a really great tool. And I think that Shadow RC has everywhere to go in terms of upwards. I don't think that it can only go up from here. So if you use it and you have questions, feel free to let me know. Hopefully this breakdown gives you kind of an idea on how to troubleshoot some things and work through the process of making him work. If you have, code updates that you're like, hey, I know how to do this thing and I know how to make sure that this is going to work well, please reach out to me because I'm always wanting to improve this system. But ultimately, that is Shadow RC. That is how you can take your original parts of a Shadow or Padawan 360 build and ditch the Bluetooth and the old controllers and stuff like that, and go with an RC system. And maybe this system feels a little bit more intuitive to you. It certainly does for me. But if this system feels a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more automated and a little bit better for, trooping and stuff like that, I welcome any comments that you might have and any suggestions on how to make it better. So thank you all, everyone. I hopefully will be back with some more content surrounding C-3PO, R2-D2, and the troops that I do. But I'm Protocol Cosplay. Please subscribe if you aren't yet already, and I will see you in the next video. All right, have fun, everyone. Bye.